On a warm summer night in 2002, a family's life was changed forever. 14-year-old Elizabeth Smart, a bright, talented teenager, was taken from her own bedroom in the dead of night, her disappearance leaving a void in her family's heart and a haunting mystery for an entire nation. Welcome to Chilling Fireside Stories, where we dive into some of the most haunting cases in recent history. Tonight I'm bringing you the story of Elizabeth Smart, a story of resilience, trauma, and survival that captured the hearts of millions. A quick note: this documentary covers sensitive topics and viewer discretion is advised. I will also share images from the case toward the end, so stay with me for the full story. And if you're new here, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more true stories that stay with you long after the fire dies down. Elizabeth Ann Smart was born on November 3, 1987, in Salt Lake City, Utah, into a loving family that valued their faith and each other deeply. Elizabeth, the second oldest of 6 siblings, grew up in a close-knit Mormon family where she excelled in school and displayed a love for music, especially the harp. Friends described her as responsible, gentle, and deeply connected to her family. But in June of 2002, their idyllic life would face an unimaginable upheaval. On June 5, 2002, the Smarts were sound asleep when tragedy struck. Elizabeth, 14, was sharing a room with her younger sister, Mary Catherine, when a strange man entered their bedroom through an open window. Around 1 a.m., Elizabeth, barely awake, was forced at knife point to leave her home by a man whispering threats. Mary Catherine, though terrified, pretended to be asleep but witnessed everything from under the covers. It wasn't until the morning at 4 a.m. that Mary Catherine summoned the courage and ran to her parents' room to tell them Elizabeth was gone. The family searched the house, hoping to find Elizabeth, but quickly realized she was missing. They immediately called the police, sparking a frantic search. Authorities and volunteers scoured the neighborhood and surrounding areas, while news of her disappearance spread, drawing national attention and intense media coverage as people anxiously awaited any updates on Elizabeth's whereabouts. As soon as the abduction was reported, the Salt Lake City Police Department launched one of the most intense search efforts the state had ever seen. Thousands of volunteers scoured the city and surrounding wilderness, desperate to find any trace of Elizabeth. The Smarts' home became the epicenter of a massive investigation involving police, the FBI, and other agencies, all working around the clock to locate the missing teen. But for months, leads remained scarce. With no physical evidence and no solid sightings, the community and the Smart family were left in an agonizing limbo. Police went over every detail of the Smarts' lives, questioning family members and neighbors, but every lead seemed to lead to a dead end. One critical clue came from Elizabeth's sister, Mary Catherine. It was in October, 4 months after the abduction, she began to recall details about the man who had taken Elizabeth. She remembered his voice and a certain familiarity about him. Eventually, Mary Catherine recalled a man named Emmanuel, who had once worked odd jobs around the family's home. This memory was the breakthrough the investigation needed. Emmanuel was identified as Brian David Mitchell, a local drifter known for his unusual beliefs and erratic behavior. But even with a name, tracking Mitchell down proved difficult. He was a drifter moving from place to place with no set residence. He also wasn't alone. Mitchell's wife, Wanda Barzee, was his constant companion, and police believed she was aiding him in keeping Elizabeth hidden. After being taken from her home at knife point, Elizabeth Smart was led by Brian David Mitchell into a concealed encampment in the nearby mountains of Salt Lake City. Once there, Mitchell, who considered himself a religious prophet, performed a forced marriage ceremony, declaring Elizabeth as his new wife. Mitchell controlled Elizabeth through psychological terror, threats, and physical violence, using his accomplice, Wanda Barzee, to enforce compliance. Isolated from her family, Elizabeth endured months of captivity, where she was routinely subjected to abuse, starvation, and forced to live under strict control and harsh conditions. Mitchell attempted to manipulate Elizabeth's mindset by claiming he was fulfilling a divine mission and convincing her that attempts to escape would be futile. Elizabeth remained mostly hidden, even when they moved between camps or ventured briefly into public areas. Mitchell controlled every aspect of her life, making her dependent on him and Barzee for even the basics like food and clothing. This forced dependency, coupled with threats of harm to her family, kept Elizabeth compliant until her dramatic rescue months later. During her captivity, Elizabeth Smart was referred to as Augustine by her captor Brian David Mitchell. This was part of the manipulation and control he exerted over her. Elizabeth later shared that she adopted a survival strategy by complying with her captor's demands and even adopting the name Augustine to cope with the trauma and maintain a sense of self-preservation. In March 12, 2003, 9 months after her abduction, the nation's prayers were answered. Several people in the community recognized Elizabeth and her abductors, Brian David Mitchell and Wanda Barzee, from photos shown on TV shows like America's Most Wanted and Larry King Live. On the day of her rescue, 2 couples in Sandy, Utah, spotted Elizabeth with Mitchell and Barzee and reported the sighting to the police. The police quickly followed up on the tip and pulled over the vehicle Mitchell, Barzee, and Elizabeth were traveling in. Elizabeth was safely recovered and reunited with her family, who welcomed her home with overwhelming relief and gratitude. Her return became a moment of triumph and a turning point in her healing journey. After her return, Elizabeth faced the daunting challenge of rebuilding her life. She had been through unimaginable trauma, but with her family's support she began the process of recovery. Both Mitchell and Barzee faced charges for their roles in her kidnapping. In a high-profile trial, Mitchell was found guilty and sentenced to life in prison, while Barzee received a 15-year sentence. Justice was served, but for Elizabeth, her journey was just beginning. Today, Elizabeth Smart is an activist, author, and public speaker, dedicated to advocating for missing persons and survivors of traumatic experiences. After her rescue, she graduated high school, attended Brigham Young University, and has since built a fulfilling life. She married Matthew Gilmore in 2012, and they have 3 children. Through the Elizabeth Smart Foundation, she actively works to prevent and raise awareness of abduction, exploitation, and human trafficking. Smart also frequently speaks at events, sharing her story to inspire resilience and healing among others. Elizabeth's story is a powerful reminder of resilience, hope, and the importance of family. If this story moved you, please like this video and share your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe for more real-life stories that honor the strength of the human spirit. In the description, you'll find links to the Elizabeth Smart Foundation, as well as resources for missing persons and survivors of abuse. Thank you for watching Chilling Fireside Stories, and stay tuned to see images related to Elizabeth's story.